Good afternoon. It's Tuesday the 19th of March. It's the afternoon. And today, welcome to Saba's Way of Life. So today I'm going to do a little recap. And the recap is concerning our way of thinking. This channel really concerns a way of life which I believe I've achieved that is balanced, is able to embrace all of the factors that make us human and follow the path of God in a society that is largely insane. And I'm living in the UK, and the UK frequency is absolute insanity when you look at what's happening with the government. The US is just the same, if not worse. So that's what this channel is about. And then everything I do, it's about the thought process that goes behind it that helps me stay not just sane, but actually articulate, intelligent, thinking ahead, calm, measured, though not always, and able to live a fulfilling, meaningful and purposeful life. So now the example I'm going to give is today. You will recall, those of you who've been watching every video I've put up, because it's like a story, as I mentioned, and I've stated in the description of this channel, but I've also talked about many times before in different videos. I talk a lot about writing things down. So I'm going to give you an example of today, because I've got an enormous amount of work done today, more than I do on other days. And I just want to remind you all on how this works. So the very first thing is that I sleep early at night. I've talked about it before. Go back and watch those videos. I sleep early and I get up early. I don't have an alarm clock when I wake up. I haven't done for many, many years, unless I need to catch a flight somewhere, or there's a very good reason that if I didn't wake up, in the unlikely event I'd miss something that would cause a big problem. So I don't wake up with an alarm. So I was up this morning at 4:30, and the sun is coming up earlier each morning. So around 5:15, I think it starts to get light, 5:30, and by 6:30 it's daylight. I need to be out to get my hens out. So it's good to have animals in that respect, because it gives you a reason to get up and feed them. But this is the important point that I want to share. I write everything down, and I'm not suggesting for a minute that I'll get it all done. But the first thing I do when I come down and I've washed, and I pray. There's no particular regime or ritual. I just sit quietly and say a prayer the way I wish to. I follow a lot of the words of the Quran. Again, I've talked about this before, nothing to do with religion. And so I say a few prayers that I've read in there, a few verses I've read in there, and then I ask God in English for whatever I need help with, or I just talk to him. I do all sorts of things, but I'm very quiet, I'm very focused, and I'm silent. It's just silence around me, especially that time of the morning. Then what I do is, with a cup of tea or coffee or whatever, generally a tea, I sit down and I write down all the things that I'd like to do today, and they just come out of my head at that time of the morning, because I've not picked up my mobile phone, I've not touched it, I've not engaged thinking, oh, what did he or she say yesterday? My brain doesn't even register media, because I don't watch television. I don't have Facebook. I have Instagram, but I use it under a pseudonym name only to get knowledge from areas I need to get knowledge from. That's it. TikTok, what is that shit? Excuse me. I think that's the first time I've uttered a profanity on here, but it is, shite. So I don't have any of that. So none of that comes into my brain to actually, I don't get digressed easily in that respect. and no notification comes in, nothing. It's just me and silence and my own thoughts. So then I get a piece of paper before daily thoughts start coming in, because invariably they will eventually, and I write down all the things I need to do. So for example, I know I need to go to my parents' house. I still wrote it down, parents for breakfast, because I help them there in the morning. And then other things, make a phone call to here, pay for this bill, go and visit this hardware store to look for a cord I needed for my father. It's a fruit day, I need to sow, or flower day, I need to sow XYZ seeds, which were already prepared the night before. So all the things I need to do, I wrote down. Spend 1 hour on scripture work, on reading the, I'm reading the translation of the Quran, and one verse can take me an hour because I read the notes, I read the addendum, and that's what I am drawn to do at the moment. And then watch XYZ YouTube video on Russian politics, because I follow a real politic very closely. Once I've written them down, they're out of my head and they're down on paper. Now, what happens is this: this is something you will learn over time. You don't need to busybody your brain worrying about whether you can get it all done or not, because you've written it down. You already know in the process of writing it down that number 2 is very important, or number 4 is very important. Your brain should have already computed that knowledge. Trust it. So for example, I may have had a bill to pay, which is very important that I deal with today. But see, what I haven't done is sat down to say today is an admin day, unless I've left all my admin to the last minute. And this is what most of us do. I don't. As things come in, I deal with them then and there. And so in my day, it's a variety of different things, which makes it much easier because you're not having to sit down in one place and do something you hate doing. I don't like admin. I've spent years doing admin. I don't like it. I want to be outside. So I put these things down, that this needs to be done today, that bill needs to be paid today, and so on. Right? So pay attention here. And once you've written it down, then it's there. And your natural ability, your own connection to source, especially if you are a person of faith and you are a believer, your connection to God will guide you. Just know that. And it may take time, but persevere. And so what I then do is I think, okay, you know what, right now, I want to go into the garden and at least get some of these seeds sown, because it's a flower day and I've got a lot to do. So I don't think, oh, should I do that? Should I do that first? No, I just get my coat on, get my boots on, and I go out. I go straight out. Mobile hasn't come anywhere near me yet. It's now 7 o'clock in the morning, and I start filling pots with soil, and I'm very quiet and I'm listening to the birds. Now, this is another thing. I'm just going to digress slowly here. This is another thing. When you're quiet and you're listening to the birds, you're actually communing with them at that time. There's communication going on between you and nature. Whether you hear the breeze, it's very quiet at that time, generally. And today, early this afternoon, I was out seeding a little bit more in between other things that I've done, and I could hear a frog. I know the sound of a frog because I've had frogs in my garden before. And because I'm growing things, they know. They know in this suburban area where nobody goes into the garden and grows anything because they're sitting on their screens all day, eating crisps and chips and fast food rubbish and just becoming humanoids. They're already humanoids, nothing human about them. Nature knows when it sees somebody and a garden that's exploding with colour and with love and with nourishment and nurture. They're drawn to it. They're drawn to it. it's God's work, really. And so I could hear the frogs this afternoon. I could hear the frogs, and I was looking around, and I got a small garden, and I could have been anywhere at that moment. I could have been in a lush, dense forest, because my ears were so acutely able to hear everything. And because I was focused, really focused on what I was doing at that time, because everything had come out of my mind and me put down on paper. And when I got a little bit tired of doing what I've done, or I did it a bit, I came in and thought, I could sit down for 5 minutes. And that's when I would go up and sit down and pay the bill. I might grab a drink or hot water and pay the bill. I make my own homemade yogurt. So I even managed early this morning to put the milk on, came to the boil, let it cool down, put some yogurt culture in and put it into the oven on a warm oven. And I'm switching the oven on and off through the day, just slightly to keep it at a certain temperature. I'm doing all of this. I even had lunch, and I made myself a homemade tawa naan that took me 5 minutes because I prepared the dough this morning as well. On top of that, I managed to drive to a particular hardware shop to check for something for my father. Couldn't find it, so managed to order it on Amazon, which I don't like doing, but I did. All of these things have been done. And it isn't like, oh God, isn't that an amazing thing that you've done that? No. What I'm trying to explain to you is that we lose so much time thinking about stuff that's irrelevant. You will even find, this happens to me all the time, where at the moment I go in and sit down to pay a bill or do something, I will get a text from somebody it happened today. I'll get a text from somebody I know at that time asking me a question. Should I do this or should I do that? That was today's text. I've been out all day without the phone, but that person texted me at that moment. And that, again, is God's work. That is synchronicity. Let go and things just happen, and I was able to respond straight away. Immediately. This happens all the time, and this is how life should be. So just work with nature, work with your own, write things down and then just flow with the day, and you'll find you'll get a lot of things done. Not every day is perfect, and that's fine too, because you're human. But the more you practice this, the more powerful it is, and you will become an extremely enlightened person. And I'm not talking about enlightened in that way. I'm talking about enlightened in the real meaning of the word, because that's what all real human beings are. They're enlightened beings who've had the Spirit of God blown into their souls, their ruh, before they were put down on earth. That's who we are, and it's been taken away from us. Don't let it happen. Get it back. That was my message for today, and I'll talk more about the garden tomorrow.